Hello. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our November lecture. We're very pleased to see you out here today. I was hoping a few more would drift in after, because some people don't come for lunch. But maybe they'll drift in while we're in the midst of our conversation. But thanks for coming out today for our conversation with our Lake Forest School Superintendent, Dr. Matthew Montgomery. Dr. Montgomery joined the Lake Forest community last summer with his wife and 4 children after leaving his superintendent position with the Revere School District in Ohio. Over 6 years as the Revere superintendent, Dr. Montgomery oversaw the construction of a new high school and navigated, obviously, the pandemic with all the issues that students and teachers had with that those 2 years. So quite a navigation you did. The Revere School Board President said, Dr. Montgomery led by example. He is a person of character, integrity, and vision. Those are the qualities that you would look for in any leader, and Dr. Montgomery presents all of them. He went on to say, we thank Dr. Montgomery for the dedication and support he has brought for the past 6 years. His leadership allowed our district to shine. He has done wonderful things for our district. So Dr. Montgomery began his career at the Waterloo Local School District in Atwater, Ohio. He was a science teacher and later became the principal of the Waterloo Middle School, and then went on to be the head principal of the Waterloo High School. After working as a principal, he became the superintendent of the Waterloo Local School District in July 2013. During his tenure, he focused heavily on enhancing STEM curriculum. The position of superintendent of Waterloo Local School District led Dr. Montgomery to then move to the Revere Local School District in Bath, Ohio, where he served as superintendent beginning in July 2015. While he was there, he successfully led the district's improvement on the Ohio School Report Card Performance Index. Get that out there. And you're going to do the same thing here, right? So, Dr. Montgomery serves as the co-chair of the School Superintendents Association STEM Leadership Consortium, and he's a steering committee member of the National Superintendents Roundtable. He also serves as a member of the Superintendent Advisory Board of Jason Learning. You obviously probably don't know that much about Jason, but it's an organization that provides STEM curriculum to help a district close STEM learning gaps, improve student outcomes, and support STEM in teachers and staff. So in these challenging times for education, it's so important to hear from Dr. Montgomery for your vision and your plans for Lake Forest schools. So welcome, Dr. Montgomery.
Thank you so much, Spencer. I'm excited to be with all of you today. My excitement about being in Lake Forest is unparalleled, and to be able to call Lake Forest home is an honor both personally and professionally. And my family and I, as Jet said, I have 4 children. We have an 8th grader, a 7th grader, a 4th grader, and a 3rd grader. 2 at Cherokee and 2 at Deer Path. And they are my wife and I's world, as they should be. And they're exhausting in so many ways and spectacular. Dewey was asking me, what am I doing this weekend? And my highlight is just spending time with them. So that's what I like to do when I'm not with my day job, which often turns into a day and night job. And that's the power of the work. So while I'm with you today, we're going to talk about 4 areas, but I left a lot of time for Q&A because I want to hear what questions you may have. It is a rare gift to be able to share our story and where we are, and then hopefully entertain any questions or wonderings that you may have, because you might not hear from school folks on a regular basis on the things that are happening within the district. I serve as the superintendent of both District 67 and 115. And this is my 10th year as superintendent. When I was exploring Lake Forest, it was a unique opportunity to have the idea of a shared service model. In Ohio, I was a superintendent over a unit district, which is a K-12 district. I had never heard of really districts that were 9-12s and pre-K-8s, which is common in Illinois. There's also unit districts. So the idea of serving two was intriguing to me and a challenge. It has certainly proved to be intriguing and a challenge because I have the pleasure of serving 14 school board members. And it is a benefit to the community when you look at shared services in its model, because instead of each district having 2 superintendents, 2 chief business officers, 2 technology folks, you're able to have economy and scale when you're going after contracts, and then they split the cost of that administrative personnel in half. So it saves the district approximately, and I say the word save, I should say it allows the district to reinvest those monies back into other things for kids, but it saves about $2.1 million annually in personnel cost alone. And there are 23 shared service personnel between both District 67 and 115. It is the hardest thing I've ever done. It's a small district, so, and I'll tell you some of the factoids, but the idea of having, because they operate as separate entities in terms of board policies, budgets, separate personnel, and board. So there's 2 board meetings every month. It is complex work, and it's a fun chessboard to navigate through. And I'm growing as a leader. And if I'm growing, I'm happy because I get bored so easily. And my wife will tell you that if I'm bored, I'm almost like a toddler. I'm self-destructive. And I just I'm that person at the Thanksgiving dinner table where the conversation lulls. I just say something to watch people explode. It's not a shining characteristic. So I have to be busy. And that's what I am right now. And so it's healthy for me. So the 4 topics that I'm going to hit on before we get to Q&A are just an overview, so the factoids about Lake Forest, and then talk a little bit about the work we've done with a visioning process we did last year, and now the strategic planning process we're engaged in now. And I will finish on facilities. I promise I am not here to campaign to you. So that is a commitment I want to say up front, but I am going to educate you briefly on where we are on some potential capital improvements with our facilities. Anything I don't touch on, we'll get in Q&A. Okay, so here are, I'm going to separate them and talk a little bit about District 67. District 67 is our K-8 district. So we have pre-K-8, we have a preschool in Sheridan. So there's 3 elementaries: Sheridan, Cherokee, Everett, and then we have Deer Path Middle. Many of you know that. Many of you have children that went through the system. When we look at factoids for 67, there's about 1,600 students that are attending the district, and we have many opportunities for kids to get on. So I'm intrigued by everything that my own students are able to do. So if you just look at 100% of our students K4 participating in music and art, 100% of them middle school are having exposure to STEM. You heard in my bio a little bit, I was a high school science teacher. Where I started in STEM is something that's exceptionally important to me personally. And I do advocacy work around STEM at the national level. The fact that we have all of our students exposed to the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics programming is important to me. And then the fact that we have all of our 5-8 students getting exposed to world languages, whether it be Spanish, French, Latin, or Mandarin, that's important as well. And we have Spanish and Mandarin in the elementary grades as well. That is not common. In my previous district, we did not have foreign language starting in the elementary levels. And that addition of a second language early in life helps them long-term in so many different other facets. When we turn to the high school is a 9-12, and we have about 1,500 students at the high school. And I describe this as the Disneyland of high schools. In my mind, that's what it is. Because when you walk in, there is a opportunity for every kid to find what they're passionate about. And if there is an absent of, if there's a need, if there's something that they are interested in, we will create that for them. It was described to me as a boutique high school. I think that could be perceived both positively and negatively, but I'm going to highlight the positive in that there is a place for everyone. There's 60 clubs. There's 33 athletic opportunities. So whatever you're interested in, we have a place for you to find your people. And when you talk about the mental health crisis that we're experiencing across this country, every student finding their people and their passion is important, because without being overly dramatic, it saves lives. Because we want them to be connected. We want them to have people to lean on. And while it is not perfect, I will tell you that we are unparalleled with many of our peers across the country. And it is a gift to serve in this type of environment. Financially, both districts are, they achieved the AAA bond rating. That's important. My previous district, we were a AA, and we were thrilled by that. We didn't have enough in reserves to get to the AAA standard. The fact that both are AAA is important to me, and it should be to the community. And we reaffirmed that AAA bond rating this last school year when we were taking a short-term borrow out for some facilities work. Other things on this to draw your attention to, the average ACT score is 25.5. We're watching that closely. 98% is our graduation rate. And one thing that the board is passionate about, and I am as well, is that number of 88% of our students participating in extracurricular activities. We really want that to be 100. So we are continually pushing the envelope to get more students involved in something. We don't care what it is, but we want you to be involved. And then you can see at the bottom, we are very much a college preparatory environment. We can argue about if that's good or bad, but it is an opportunity for our students who are pursuing the college environment, which is about, I don't know if it's up here or not. I don't want to misquote it. If it's not up here, I'm going to give you a number. 95% of our students are attending college or university. That number dips when you look at how many complete 2 years, 4 years, 5 years. We have that data as well. But the fact that 95% of them are attending, it speaks to our commitment to the college prep environment. Last year, we explored what we were all about. And I asked a question about vision and where we were headed, because as a new leader, I should help influence the vision and the direction, but I shouldn't curate. It should come from the community about where we want our students to go. So the community came together, and when I say the community, District 65, District 67, and District 115 came together to create a vision for all three districts that anchors them together. That is unique because they're separate organizations, but the way we looked at it is whether you are a Lake Bluff or Knollwood student going to District 65 or a Lake Forest district in 67, you would ultimately matriculate to the high school and cross that graduation stage together. So when we came together, we brought 150 people with us, and this was last spring. And it was right when masks were coming off. So it was almost a celebration of life that the pandemic was starting to, set in terms of the 2 years of our life that I'm sure many of us are not eager to relive. And I will tell you from a leadership standpoint, it is the hardest thing I've ever done leading through the pandemic, because I became an honorary epidemiologist and I was not able to focus on my day job as much. So the teaching and learning focus switched to arguing about masks and how to keep kids safe and how to keep adults safe and make decisions. And I felt as if communities both, because I was in Ohio for the first part of the pandemic and here for the second, communities were looking at school leaders as much as they were looking at health leaders to try to figure out how to protect the kids that we all have the pleasure of serving. So I hope I never have to go through that again, and I hope all of us don't have to go through that again. The most valuable point or part of the visioning process for me was we heard students share their story and their desire. And sometimes as adults, I say this often, we listen too much to each other and not enough to students. And we undervalue their voice at the table. And as much as we like to have it all figured out, you should talk to a 4-year-old with a lot of questions, because we don't have as many answers as I think we like to believe we do. And hearing their voice come together shaped where we're heading with the vision. We had a graphic artist, and this is busy up here, but I want you to know that to create this vision with 150 voices coming together, we looked at how the world was changing. We looked at what does deeper learning mean and what we wanted to focus on in addition to academic excellence. And I don't know if you've ever seen one of these meetings where there's a graphic artist that's just drawing the conversation. And it is a lovely story that shows that this was an iterative process that took a long time to come together to land at what we're calling our portrait of a learner. And what this represents is, in addition to academic excellence, we believe that our graduates should possess the following 6 skills on top of their foundation of academic excellence and rigor. And those 6 are critical thinking, confidence, communication, adaptability, citizenship, and empathy. These are life skills. So what has happened from my lens as an educator is that we are graduating students back to their parents' basement post-college. There is a trend across the country that people are going through the collegiate experience and graduating back into their basements. We don't want that for kids. We want them to find their passion. We want to find them their desire, and we want them to live a well-balanced life as we see more and more individuals living an unhappy life that's bigger than their salary. And that's just real talk from my perspective of how we need to own how we're shaping the future for kids. If you look at the suicide rates, if you look at the rate in which the violence is occurring, if you look at the overuse of substance abuse, there are a lot of things that make this world a big, scary place. So we want to look at what we can do as an organization to not only provide that academic excellence, but give them the life skills to be successful regardless of the pathway they choose. And that's not meant to be dramatic. That's why I get up every day to do this work. And I think it's that important for kids, whether they're my own or with the ones that I have the pleasure of working with. I believe that any organization, whether private or public, needs to have a vision and then needs to have a strategic plan. And the world works a lot more efficiently if they communicate with each other and they hang together. So the vision should inform the strategic plan, and the strategic plan should inform the vision. And it is not fluff work, and it is not, some organizations, public or private, will make these wonderful strategic plans. They put them on their website, they print them out, they have a trifold, they have a poster, and they say, yes, we have this, we've done this work. And then nobody pays attention to it. And people do whatever they want as individuals, and you get some progress, but I don't think as much progress as if you pull together and you agree that this is what we're going to work on for the next 3 to 5 years. And you're going to hear a lot of great ideas. People always have great ideas, but if it's not aligned to your vision and it's not aligned to your strategic plan, you should be investing your time and energy elsewhere. So this year, we are working on a strategic plan for both District 67 and District 115. When I told you the vision was created among all 3 districts, the strategic plans are unique. There's autonomy now. So what the work is being done in 67 is different from 115, appropriately so. And by February of this year, or of next year, this school year, I will be asking both boards of education to approve a new strategic plan that was brought together through a stakeholder group in each district respectively. That's important to me. It is not something that we're just going to do for the sake of doing. It will actually guide me on what I'm saying yes to and what I'm saying no to, and what I'm presenting to the board and what I'm not. That's how much I value this work. And having a whole bunch of voices at the table is important because, again, I serve at the will of the population of the community. It can't be me that's making all of these decisions or a small subset of leaders. It needs to be responsive of what the community's desires are and aspirations. So we actually had, yesterday was a busy day. A couple of you in the room were with me. So we're doing these meetings together. So on the same day. So in the morning, we met with District, help me, 67. It was a long day. And then in the afternoon, we met with District 115. And we got focus areas from those groups. There's about 50 different community members or stakeholders in each group. And now it's time for us to start writing a draft that we will share in January and ultimately ask the board to approve in February. Here are pictures. We have students involved in this process as well. We have parents, we have teachers, we have administrators, we have community members who are not associated or do not have students directly involved in the school. That diversity of voice is important to make sure we're capturing the will of the community. This is my last topic, and then I'll go to Q&A. When I was interviewing, there was a great deal of conversation around how are we going to maintain our facilities in both districts, but the district that had the most focus was District 115. If you drive by the high school on McKinley, I hope you still get goosebumps, and I hope it doesn't go away because it has yet to go away for me in a year and a half. It is one of the most beautiful campuses I've ever seen. When you pull back the veil, though, there is infrastructure that needs a whole lot of work. And that work started, those conversations started well before my tenure. In fact, they were really coming to life spring of 2020, and that pesky little thing happened in March that shut everything down, which was the pandemic. So the board asked the leaders in the district to revitalize that plan last school year, and we will be ready to make big decisions for the district on a potential referendum as early as December. And I want to invite you to a community forum that is going to happen on November 14th, where we are going to unveil a plan for the building and how we are going to ensure that it stays open for the next 20 years. Because when you look at 510,000 square feet of building, there are lifespan issues on electrical, mechanical, HVAC, windows, and there's that other thing we do during the day, which is teach kids. And we have to look at how we are supplying the kids with the teaching materials and the furniture we need to ensure that they are staying with their peers. And my hope is always ahead of their peers, because we want to lead the pack. And this environmental change will make that possible. So you will get, next week, you should get in your mailboxes a flyer if you haven't heard about this yet. And we're putting it out through the city and through Lake Bluff as well, to invite community members to come in to learn more about this. It's next, no, it's not, that's 2 Mondays from now, right? I hope it's not next Monday. Okay, November 14th, we'll be inviting people in so they can hear about the plan before the board takes any action, and educate and make sure we're answering questions before we get too far into this process. That, I think, is my last slide. It is. So at this time, I would welcome any questions you may have about topics I introduced or topics that I did not. I rather enjoy Q&A, so it can be conversational in nature, whatever you need. I will do my best to answer the question. If I don't have the answer, we'll get it to you. Yes, ma'am.
As a past faculty member of District 67, how available are you to not just the staff, but to the students themselves? How well do they get to know you?
That was a question in my interview. And so both boards pressed me pretty hard on my philosophy of how often I'm interacting with students. It is easy to get lost in the office with this type of job when you're running a $120 million organization with 700 employees, with then a community to serve on top of that. So you can find every excuse in the book, many of them legitimate, to not be in classrooms. That is, unfortunately, I love teaching more than anything else. I'm saying that jokingly, but I feel most alive when I'm in a classroom. I try to be, I meet with every principal. So there's 6 principals in the elementary and 1 at the high school. I have a one-on-one session with them every month. And the second half of that meeting is the principal and myself walking through classrooms. So I am in classrooms at least once a week, unless I'm traveling for a conference. And I am seeing what's happening in the classroom, and I'm visiting with students. There are special occasions, like last year, where I spent days, I spent a day in 67, a day in 115, because I believe you have to shadow students. So I shadowed a student through the whole day to get their experience. And then I'm inviting students into focus groups and think tank kind of experiences, as well as inviting them to the strategic planning process and the portrait process. When there is a group of individuals, I will gravitate towards the students and listen to what they have to say first. And maybe people don't like that. I don't really care. It's when I'm most alive. And I think that that's who I should listen to first as an educational leader. That being said, I still don't think it's enough. So it's going to, my previous district, it took 2 to 3 years for the kids to really know me. And I will continue on that plight here until it happens. It helps in grades where my kids are there. I get a leg up, because my favorite thing to hear is when I'm walking around the elementary or the middle school, oh, that's Jacqueline's dad. You're Everett's dad. And I am that first. So when they don't recognize me as a superintendent yet, but recognize me as a dad of one of their friends, I actually secretly am most happy about that response. Yes, sir.
Short while ago, there was a report about the test score in Chicago schools was significantly down from 2 years prior and attributed to COVID. And I wonder if that degree of drop represented across the country and whether we see that up in.
So we had a meeting last night for the District 67 families, because we saw a significant drop, or we're experiencing a significant drop in academic performance. I refuse to blame the pandemic, though. So we are actually back to pre-pandemic levels, which I'm really proud of. And it is still woefully under where we should be. So I very much believe in owning data, and you will not hear excuses from me. If we are not doing well, which I would argue in District 67, we have a lot of opportunities for growth. You'll hear about it. And then it is my job to give you a plan of how we're going to make those improvements. I don't think it's pandemic related. I think it's impacted by the pandemic, but we have to do a deep look at teaching and learning right now, more so in 67 than 115. That being said, the wheels aren't falling off, and the kids in these type of environments, and this is, take this however you may take it, our kids will be okay, but we cannot, or I refuse to rely on that fact that 9 times out of 10 in communities such as ours, our kids will be okay because of the situation they're in. That doesn't sit well for me. And I will continue to push to make sure that we are leading whatever metrics that people want to throw out there, because it is my philosophy. And when you're fortunate enough to lead in an area such as this, one of the reasons that drew me to these districts is that I could sandbox from an educational perspective. So if public education can't work here, it can't work, because it's just about what you want to spend resources on, not do you have the resources. I say that as a fiscal conservative, so I want to marry that. I don't like to spend money on things that I don't believe will have a high ROI for kids. But this is the type of place that you can experiment and you can push kids with some pretty exciting educational practices. All that being said, in District 67, we've got a lot of growth. 115, we just got scores back, and there was a slight dip in SAT scores. And we're analyzing that right now. Not a terrific drop. We're still in the top 20 of the state. But I'm curious about what's happening. And we're diving into, do we need to pull some different levers? I think that's really stemming from the fact that we are an ACT school. So I don't know if that means anything to you. So there's two different types of tests to get into college, the ACT and SAT. The vast majority of our students take an ACT test. I think that, but the state picked SAT for how they were going to rank us. I think we need to make sure that we have SAT skills embedded in the classroom as much as we have ACT, because it's our job to prepare kids regardless of what test they're taking or what they're doing. I'm going to marry this conversation with that test scores don't really matter, in that if you're doing poorly on tests, it's a symptom of what's happening in the classroom. So I never believed in teaching to the test or changing programmatic structures because of how you're performing on the test, but I do want to know what's happening in those classrooms and how we're meeting the needs of all of our students. Yes, sir.
I'm interested in your opinion about outside influence, primarily parents and government. It's my understanding that these influences are more negative than ever. And I wonder if you agree with that, and if so, how are you dealing with it?
So there is pros and cons of anything. Let's talk about parents first. I will pick serving in this type of community where parents are involved every time over a community where parents are not involved. I think that the pandemic brought out the worst in people. Even, I believe people are genuinely good. Good people still were suffering, and that manifested in a lot of ugly ways of release valves that sometimes the only person to yell at was the school. So I think we need to compartmentalize those 2 years, because post-pandemic, I've seen a shift back to we're breathing again and we're willing to have authentic conversations. And I do not believe that parent involvement is a bad thing. In fact, I think it's quite the opposite. Parents being involved, we cannot, nor should we, you're going to hear my educational philosophy, we cannot do everything for kids. It has to be the parents, the school, and the students. There has to be 3 legs to that stool. And without that parent involvement, I think kids are set up for failure. And you see that in schools or in communities where there is less parent involvement for whatever reason. And I never believe, I refuse to believe, even in the most impoverished areas, that parents don't want to be involved with their kids. I think by necessity, there is a limitation of their involvement because of other things that they are trying to do to survive. In these environments, we have the privilege of truly partnering with our families, and they push us to be better 9 times out of 10. Government is a whole other animal. I will tell you that I struggle with, we are lucky because we do not rely on, largely we're locally funded. The vast majority of our funding is locally. We do not take, even for the lunch programming, we're privately funded for that. So we have a little bit more wiggle room, but there are things in place that curtail what we can do because of government oversight. Some people think that's really good. Some people don't. I'm probably in the middle. You should, like, for example, the government says that we should educate all of our students, whether they have special education needs or not. I think that's a good thing to have. So you'll find me navigating the middle more often than not on both of those. but I get exceptionally frustrated when I get handcuffs put on me when I think that I could be doing something above and beyond for kids and I'm limited. That happens rarely, but it was exemplified in the pandemic when I thought we should be taking masks off. That was probably the biggest, and I don't want to get in a mask debate right now, but there was a great deal of overreach, in my opinion, on local control, and that was problematic. Mrs. Oakley is my communications. So I always look at her like, how did I do with that one? If she starts moving in her chair a lot, then I know I need to dial it back. It's about.
Maybe the question between today, looking forward, what is the process and criteria for evaluating the performance of teachers?
So one of the first reasons is looking at data. So right now, I told you we have a data issue in 67 where the data is saying that we have opportunities for growth in terms of we're woefully under where we should be. The evaluation process for teachers is outlined in the bargaining agreement. So for those, I didn't tell you this and the other things that are interplaying here, we have 4 unions, 4 separate collective bargaining agreements, 2 in 67 and 2 in 115. And much of the evaluation system is outlined there. That is not how you get teachers to improve though. So you can have whatever you want to write in a collective bargaining agreement. That's not how you change what happens in the classroom. It's through partnerships, it's through collaborations, it's through sharing that voice. And sometimes we, just like we mute the student voice, we mute teacher voices. And it should be a real partnership about how we can tackle the problems we're facing. And very rarely, if there is somebody who cannot cut it, they need to be exited from it's not an improvement, it's an exiting of the organization. But that's governed by the collective bargaining, but it's just not how I view improvement. Because if the only time you're trying to improve teaching and learning is on an annual or a biannual evaluation of teachers, I think you're missing the boat. And if we are surprised by an underperformer on an annual evaluation, I think that's more of an administrative problem, because we should not be surprised. They should know who our high flyers are, who are the middle of the roads, who are we underperforming, or who is underperforming, and then how are we scaffolding them to make sure that they are growing to the rate in which we need, or how are we helping them find another placement at another place that is maybe a better fit for them. And I think there is a fit issue. I told you, I believe people are genuinely good, but there are times when they just need to be exited off the bus, and we'll help them be successful somewhere else. They just can't be here. And if I say you're not a good fit for the organization, that's like the kiss of death, because that means that it's time for you to go. And I'll help you. But if you're not good for kids, that conversation is going to happen very quickly, because I have low patience and tolerance for people who are not good for kids.
So maybe it's a question, if you were talking about the strategic plan for the high school, and you talked about the infrastructure and the HVAC and electric stuff, but what are your thoughts on improvements to the plan that facilitate education?
And so specific to the plan?
Well, whatever you're thinking of in February.
So I don't know where they're going to land, but there are areas that, yes, so this is hot off the presses. So this group of 50 people came together, and the high school focus areas were one bucket around teaching and learning. And so what does that mean? That means that we're exploring what we need to offer kids from the physical space of the classroom, and then more importantly, or as importantly, the opportunities that we're offering them. So are we offering them internships? How are we bringing authentic experiences that's more real life instead of arbitrary and unrelated to what they're doing? How are we giving them connections to the community to give them experiences that we cannot offer? So there was a bucket around teaching and learning. Then there was a bucket around, I have to jog my memory. One was about inclusion and how we're meeting the needs of all students, regardless of their abilities. And some people argue that we have a homogeneous population, which I do agree with, but there's a great deal of heterogeneity within the homogeneous population. And that's my biology teacher coming out. Sorry, it's just a fancy way to say that we're all different, even though we may look alike. And that's something that was a bucket in an area of focus. The third one, I don't know, can you remember? Because I cannot. Yeah, inclusion was one, teaching and learning, but I thought there was one more. I think it was community.
And community communication.
Community and communication about how we're bringing the community in and we're utilizing the resources and yet meeting their needs. If you look at a little change that costs a lot of money. So if we swap out the furniture in the high school, it's $4.5 million. So not cheap. But right now you have a lot of desks that are in rows. And there's a lot of teacher talk. So the more we can make spaces where you can be in rows for some portion of the day, if you can move the classroom and you're in small groups, or they can be in pairs, the more flexible that 800 square feet is, the better you can do in terms of getting students to think in a different way. And you don't think it would make a big difference, but so in the intro just said that I came off of a $86 million project that we did a new high school, a new middle school, and renovated 2 other buildings and a bus barn just for fun, and turf. The biggest change was putting flexible furniture in the classrooms because it changes the learning experiences for kids. And if I hear in my previous district, I would hear this, Matt, you're going to be so excited when you walk in the high school, you can't hear a pin drop. Like, what? I'm never excited when I can't hear the kids, because that means that there's one person talking instead of a collective group. And when I walk into a classroom, I look for a student-led experience. And the teacher should be a facilitator instead of the person that's disseminating all of the information. I taught high-level science classes in high school. So medical level anatomy and physiology. And I still believe that I cannot be the person that's creating the synapses for them to make meanings of whatever topic I'm covering, whether it's exceptionally complex physics or whether it is some type of learning experience on the other. I'm not even going to give you an example because I don't want you to think that I'm valuing one more than the other. Yes, sir.
I think an example of this conservative, we talk about budget, school, talk about parents, Dr. Bernard, and maybe about school.
Thank you, sir. My sidekick. So when I onboarded, there was a conversation about District 67 had a balanced budget and a fund reserve that they were really proud of. But 115 had a slightly different outlook. And there were questions of, can I take a look at that as a new leader for 115? We made, I think I would say arguably minor changes. And 115 is operating in the black. Both districts are operating in the black. And it didn't come at the expense of hurting kids. During the interview process, I don't believe in running anything other than operating the black. It just doesn't sit well with me. And we were able to turn that budget around in maybe 6 to 8 months time. And we will continue to operate in that way for as long as my tenure, I'm fortunate enough to have the tenure. Just because we have a lot of resources doesn't mean that we should be spending irresponsibly. And that is something that I'm saying over and over. And just because you can say yes, I start to ask questions about, especially after the strategic plan is done and the portrait is done, whatever I'm being asked for, is it directly aligned with the work that the community said we should be doing over the next 3 to 5 years? And there is an option of saying no. And I don't know how much no was said. And this is where the parent thing comes in, because we have said yes more often than not to any request. And I think that there is a spot you have to find that says, okay, I would love to tell you yes right now, but I also am living within the constraints of the budget. And those decisions are not taken lightly, but it is a high priority to demonstrate that fiscal stewardship to the community and the taxpayers. I don't know if that's always been the philosophy, but it's my philosophy. I think it's one of the reasons the board actually chose me, because I said that out loud. Aaron Lennart is the new high school principal. who replaced Shayla Holland. I had the pleasure of selecting Aaron when I was onboarding. I was terrified because one of my friends, so I have several friends who are superintendents in the North Shore of Chicago. It's another reason that brought me here, stole Shayla. So he called me and said, I'm stealing your principal. I said, how can you steal my principal? I've not even started yet. Please leave me alone. And he joked with me, but he took her for a senior administrative spot in Naperville. I was very proud of her advancing her career and celebrated her work while she was here. So we did a search and we found Erin Leonard. She was a high-performing principal in Fairfax. And if you know anything about the Fairfax school system, it is the largest or one of the largest in the country. And she has family in the Chicago area. She actually has a condo in Chicago. And she said that my husband is retiring from the government and I'm looking to move closer to his family. So I found a rock star principal who is I was a high school principal for a short period of time. I will tell you that if I interviewed against her, I would lose every time. She is the finest high school principal I've ever seen. And in a year's time, transformed that building in terms of climate, culture, relationships, and partnership with the teachers. In 2012, this district experienced a strike. And if you know anything about strikes with unions, it takes until that generation of folks retire to heal those wounds. That's how long it takes, because it's such a caustic environment and no one's at fault. It's a victim of the circumstances. She has transformed that building in spite of that. And I am in awe of her work every day, and I'm not exaggerating. She is that good. She could do my job and probably not lose much sleep. So we're lucky to have her, and she doesn't want my job, which makes me even happier because I don't want the board to have to choose, because I'll probably just have to go find another job. The third thing you talked about is the school improvement plan. And this speaks to Erin's leadership. I told you that previously that we sometimes ignore teachers. And when we do, they feel like when you ignore teachers, they don't bring good ideas to you. And when you have really good teachers, that means that the system is not improving in the way it should, because you are silencing your smartest folks. So Erin gave it to the teachers and said, I want you to create the school improvement plan. It's a school improvement innovation plan. And the teacher said, this is about 6 months in, and they were cautious on trust. So what they did was they locked Erin and myself out of the room. They surveyed all their members, and they authored a plan independent of administration. And Erin is sitting on her hands. I'm sitting on my hands because I love to be in the thick of things. And then they brought us in at the end of the year, and they laid out what they want to work on. And it was beautiful, because when you empower the teachers, they are the ones that are making the most influence. I'm not in the classroom. I want to be in the classroom, but I'm not. So I can say whatever I want up here, but if it doesn't translate to what's happening in the classroom, it is mere, it's just speech. It's just pose. So I'm thrilled that she has developed that partnership, and the relationships are exceptionally strong right now. And I don't think they were prior to her. And I am not casting blame on that relationship. I'm just happy that she has improved it. Any other questions?
Well, thank you, everybody. Next week or next month, we're going to have the other end of the education. We're doing Montessori.
We need all of them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would say do this type of opportunity.
a whole lot of not today, no, I think this would be, maybe say, most of it, all time, use the same slides. This is a whole, that's a really still here. And that's perfect. Get the benefit.
I mean, I love writing personally.
We'll see you in the first of the year.
When I hear it's already a thing. Yeah. Like I can mom because I'm like, I thought the lab, I'm like, you can't be safe to do it. Because there was a thing that was
Your expertise, I was like, oh my God, doing okay.
I hope I was not in the background of that. You have the power of the bigger. I'll use you for something, but not for it. Thank you.
So you better get out of the office.
Yeah. chance to you. Thank
My subject.
last year and definitely has been doing a lot of work.
I can't know that I'm just sure.
Thanks.
I don't take credit. It's always the mom.
And we've actually got a surgeons. We've got so impressed. I just thought, yeah, I love my experience, like yeah, it's I agree. Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm like, wow, yeah, I can this.
Yeah, that's exactly what I feel like. No, no, mom.
It is, and it is. I keep thinking, oh my gosh, in my head, you know, it's still 26. True, but I'm talking about high school days. You're looking like, you know, they can be like the side action. They, you know, I feel like I'm more by popping up at different things. Right amongst the people. It's one of the really high lunch times.
Have a great day. Thank you. Let me you're hearing stuff about that I need to know. But that's what I want to
I know. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna get mom and it would be really fun. And I might even like all the time. And I don't know, I got full court trainer. You know that one time later, probably one college. See you. Thanks. Thank you. Well, nice to meet you. Valley Borders. High school. She said she could pay for 60, 50 last spring. You just said our 60. Well, we have a picture. No. Everyone said, no. Can I have a picture of you two together? Oh, that's great. With your phone? Yes. No, I didn't. Really? Really? I want to take a picture. That's for the alumni group. No, together? No, I'm not a nice together tonight. Everything that I can do to help out with your learning group. I have part of the fame committee for years and years and years. Another person just that's not wrong. So we can finish. I I know all of them are sitting in the hall. You want the maiden name also? Oh, yeah, her name. The maiden name is Swalwyn, and that's a about 57. And my phone number is 295-7616. Well, thank you. It was just delightful to be here. Oh, no, you know, well, very much. I didn't know you were so Yeah, you probably think it's and they don't anything involved contacts. I was still under well, and now with Sarah's information, and what are they? Thank you. Thank you. This was delightful. I just like the phone. You know, to receive the environment, not all the time. I was not very good at school. Who was inspired you? You like a picture of both. So
First ones are fairly reasonable. Yeah. She's joking. I was joking. One guy was reading the greatest people, troublemaker. And then like, what do you always remember? And like, I can't believe you're back in my life. Here you are.
Well, thank you very much for the.
I think.
And I know you can send somebody over the but maybe but I think it would be you have a solid relationship and your vision. If the one reading my well, I mean that it just says all right there. And because of that, these kids learn to read. You know, it just it was all of the values.
Talk about more just the
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the
No, you did a great job.
Caminos con ellos.
A mí no me gusta ver cosas que quiero ver. Estaba aquí,
department.